Hello there, welcome to another one of my art classes for Robbie Paints. We're going to be painting this monochromatic seascape. Black and white is good for learning new skills about tones in an artwork, and then mixing as well to get all these different kinds of grey and white and black and things like that. It's good, different types of brush strokes too. It's going to be a good one to try to help bring you along as an artist, and let's face it, it looks cool as well, doesn't it? Look at these lovely palm trees. There's this sea, it's gonna be good. Obviously you just need two colours here, black and white. I've got these ones because they are slightly better than some of the others, like the Artist Loft ones. This is slightly thicker pigment, so I've got these. Got this little towelette thing to wipe off my brush. We've got the palette here. Got a water pot. This is a 16 by 12 inch canvas panel. This is what I've got. You can use a canvas if you want. As it's a 4 by 3, you could also use a 12 by 9, or if you wanted a big one, you could do 24 by 18 if you wanted. I'm also going to be using some vine charcoal for the drawing because I can rub it out easy, and it's going to be good for this bit when I go over this with black, whereas a pencil might not make a good enough mark or be clear enough with all this grey in the background, so black will be clearer when I do this over the top of this. So I'll be using a vine bit of charcoal, but you can use a pencil if you want, or white piece of charcoal will probably do the job. Let's get on to the brushes we'll be using. I've got a big one here. We've kind of got a very long and thin one here. Got a fan brush, although you could also use these if you got one of this type of brush here rather than the fan brush. This is going to be for the hairs here, the leaves, the long reed bit elements, the curl of this. I'm going to use this for it, but like I say, if you want, you could use this. It's just very slow with that. Kind of got this medium brush that kind of fill in the bits pretty fast on a lot of various details, or the close bits when we're doing the really big sections, like just around the edges, and a small brush here for the little details. So those are what we'll be using today. If you're all set up, then let's get going. If not, pause the video and get yourself all set up. I'm going to get going with my vine charcoal. And look, if you see here, we're going to start on this mark here and this here, connecting this up. So it's going to be, if you say it's about 20% up the canvas, as you can see here, it's about 20% up. So I'm going to do, that is about 20%. You got 40, 60, 80, this is about 20. And then what's this? And this is more like about a quarter to a third up here, so there. And then it doesn't have to be a smooth line, because as you see, the ocean is not going to be, the waves aren't going to be completely smooth, so feel free to, there you go, we've got that here in there. We'll add this little bit later on. Next we're going to go and draw in the horizon line here, which is not quite halfway, because halfway is about here. This is just below halfway. So I've got a reference because I've got it here, but say, look where halfway is, around here, and then, like almost like a fingernail's width below that. So, and obviously that's fairly straight, but we will be painting over it, so it's okay if it's not completely straight now. Like I say, I'm using this because this is fairly easy to rub out like that if you want. Maybe want mine a little bit higher. There. Okay, and that's basically it for the basic drawing. We're now going to get on to mixing our paint. I'm going to go for the big brush here, and we're going to mix this sort of medium grey here, you see there. Now, so try not to do too much of it, too much paint down, in case you won't leave room for anything else. But I'm going to get this much down. You'll need more white than black, because black is a bit more of a powerful colour. There you go, watch. There we go. I'm going to mix that in. I'm lucky. I think I've got the colour I want almost pretty much first time. If it's not quite to this, then this sort of tone of grey, this sort of medium grey, then keep mixing a little bit of whatever you need. If it's darker, put a little bit light in at a time and mix it in until you get the exact sort of colour that we're after. If it's the opposite way around, if it's a bit light, then add a little bit of black just to build as you go. There you go. I'm pretty happy with that first time, so I'm going to got a lot on my brush and I'm going to fill in all this section now. There. We're just looking to get rid of the white right now, so get nice bits of paint on and get it on. There you go, that was pretty fast, wasn't it? Some nice excess paint, that's a nice medium grey. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush here, just to mix it a little bit there, and get some of these greys that are in the dark sky over here. Like there's a little bits here and there, we're going to use some of this same grey just to add some tones to this, because we're then going to lighten this to then add into here as well. So you see it's more dark here, there's some bits coming across. The direction is typically going to be the darker bits on this side, because this, as you see on here, this is the sun or the brightest part of the sky where the clouds aren't covering it, and that's going to be here. So typically the darker stuff is going to come in at this direction from this side. It's a bit darker over here. And some random bits. Tad darker bits in the sky here and there. There you go, I'm going to leave it at that now. You see I've kind of done that there with the grey, and a kind of most of the dark bits there that we can now get some white and mix in with this now. Who we got here? There you go. This is supposed to be a very light grey, and we're going to use it for both the bits in the sky and also the ocean here. So if you've got the sort of colour that you can see here, very light grey, you see it's very light in this here, this example, and we're going to get straight on and put it on with this. Don't worry too much about this horizon line bit there, get as close to it and rough as one, because you're going to go over it with a black here. This is when you'll need to be more precise, when we go over it with the darker grey black here. So right now it's okay if you go a little bit over it like that. Just get the paint in and try and get rid of the white. Like I say, it doesn't matter too much the direction either right now, because we're going to be going over this with all this sort of stuff, which adds the texture and definition and whatnot of what it is that it's supposed to be. There you go, just getting rid of this. If you want to do this part with the medium brush, because you don't want to go too much into this grey, the more medium grey here, that's fine. If you want to switch over, that's perfectly good. If you don't trust your mark making to be fairly precise and not make too much of a dent. Although, like I say, it doesn't matter too much here because waves are kind of not symmetrical as they hit the beach anyway. They're all over the place, as you may well know. Different waves are coming in at different speeds at different angles, so it's never going to be a straight line as it hits the beach. There you go, so I've got that down for the waves. So now I'm going to add some into the sky, and we're going to look to blend it a little bit with this here. Add a little bit of water just to try and loosen that up. Maybe it's not as bright, and then once we've got some of this down, I suggest you actually use your finger a little bit to smudge it in a bit. I'm going to in a second when I've got some of this sort of stuff down. Got some nice sort of cloud structures and various greys in the sky with a directional sense of where the light's going to be going. I'm not going to go all the way to this line because it helps keep where the horizon line is going to be, and like I say, we're going to go over it with this darker colour anyway, so you don't want to go all the way to this line. You need to leave this very small light white sliver there from where this is all going to be. Right, now if you get your finger and help get some of these various, just help some of these bits where it looks too defined a bit. And I'm going to add a dab of water there and try and come in a bit more with this there. Now feel free if you want to I'm going to wipe my brush off a little bit and then come back in with some of this grey and add a few more bits to blend back in with some of this, to add some more of the darker bits back in. Not too much, just enough. And you can also move over to the smaller brush if you'd like. In fact, I might use that to the medium one as I referred to it at the beginning, this one. Just add some small little bits there, You can also smudge in slightly just there. Need to add these in, and then we're going to add the white in a little bit. Already we've got a sky with a little bit of atmosphere to it. Quite a lot of different types of greys in there. So there's that. Now we are going to stick with this brush, and we're going to get some black here. Going to put a little bit on there. I'm going to get some water here and just mix some to the side there so it's a little bit watery. We don't want really thick black pigment. And I want you to, when you hold it loosely at this end, so you're not putting too much contact with the, you're not trying to do precision brushwork like this right now. You're trying to do quite loose, and we'll kind of make the marks in the sand here for where it indicates that there's feet have been in this bit, whereas this bit's been like washed smooth by the waves. But this is going to be, as you see here, it's about an inch away from the shoreline, so we're going to do it about an inch here and then go along. It doesn't have to be completely precise. You can eyeball guess it around, roughly an inch, about 2.5 centimeters for those not dealing with inches. And yeah, we're just going to make little marks. I've got a bit more black on my thing, maybe a little bit lighter than that. There you go. And as the light source is going to be over here, the dark stuff is going to be slightly darker over this side here, because as you see the light source is coming this way, so this bit might be a little bit brighter, so maybe best to add a little bit more on this side. But yeah, you see it's going to be roughly along this sort of line here. Feel free to pop it in like this, like how I'm doing now. Quite loose, weird little marks, not very big, and just all the way along here. There you go, about an inch away or so from the water. The peaks and valleys that people make in the sand of it, stepping on it, they're not really defined, so you don't really want these shapes to be too defined either. Just kind of rough suggestions of little peaks and little valleys where footprints have been, little holes and rivets in the sand. It's probably good if you got a few that are maybe occasionally here and there a little bit darker, just indicate maybe it's a slightly deeper footprint. Again, we're just trying to be fairly loose, because if you hold it too tight it'll become more of a defined shape each one, and you don't want it to look like it's a specific pattern on the beach. It's supposed to be the rough, you know, unpredictable, unsymmetrical thing that a beach with many people stepping over it all over the place would be. See, this one bit just there is still not dry for me. If you have one of these sections where it's not yet dry, you'll probably just have to put a little bit thicker actual black paint on it just to make the marks you want to make. There you see, because the grey underneath it is trying to make itself known. There you go, didn't take too long this. I hope yours is coming along nicely too. A little bit darker this side, like I say, on the other side of where the tree will be. Just a few more bits there. I think we're about done with that. Now we're going to move on to the actual main marks of the waves. First off, well actually we're going to do these little black bits first of they're just along where they're like maybe shells or something have been dragged up, and then there's a little line where it's been dragged through this smooth sand. So these little marks, very small, that's why we're using this. About medium there. You don't want to be too precise, but you don't want to be too loose either. Just, I'm following roughly the sort of direction the waves are going, which is this way, aren't they? They're coming in this way, so roughly make your marks similar in that sense. There you go, that's done. And now we're going to move on to putting in roughly where these waves are going to be with this. We're just going to like mark in where the bigger waves are. Like you got this one here, you see there. So that's going to be starting around here and ending sometime around here. You just got to follow that, you know, do the rough sort of shape of the wave. That's all we're doing right at this bit, and we're going to thicken it out in a minute, but we want to get the thin line of what it's going to be first on. So there's that one. I'm going to do this one over here, just coming in at a slight angle this way. You don't have to be too precise, I'm just following what I've done in this reference photo. And there's this big one that's coming in here. You see it follows it all the way along. I'm going to separate them so I don't get any paint from this one on there. Okay, and then there's one just behind it here. I don't know if you can tell there. So I'm going to go, there's one on this side just behind that on the end. Then you've got these, one coming just on this out of shot there, coming in. And then one behind these here. In that one, and then another big one just there, kind of in between all of them, in this gap here. Just about. And then the occasional one, like there's one coming in there, and a little one there behind that. Just gonna very lightly put that one in. Okay, now we've done that, we're going to switch over to this medium brush again, get a nice bit of black on and just make it a bit thicker, not too much. You have to hold it, I'm holding it somewhere around the middle, so I'm fairly precise but not too precise. We don't want it to take ever for ages by holding it right like that. So you see I'm just thickening and bringing it out now. If you got little bits that are thicker and some bits that are thinner, that's probably good, because that's what waves realistically would do. Different parts of it are crashing in on it. You know, when a wave falls in, it falls in from different parts a little bit sooner, depending on the size of it. When you get to these ones a little bit further back, you do have to be a little bit more precise. So if you want to hold it, you brush a little bit further on, so your brush mark it doesn't get too big. It's probably a good idea. Like you see this one was a fairly thick one there. You've seen how I've done these here. If you want to do yours in a slightly different pattern here, that's perfectly fine. Yeah. Don't worry about that, it's just my dog shaking. A slight line there. Just very thin there. There we go. This paint here is a little bit wet for me, so I need to go over it with a little bit thicker stuff. If you realise that you've gone over this with quite a thick selection of paint, then you may need to give it 5 minutes to dry before moving on with this job. So if that's the case, feel free to pause it, go do what you want for 5 minutes, come back, and then paint should have dried, because acrylic is pretty fast drying. So we've done most of that. I'm going to go back to this brush now, the long and thin one. Mixing a little bit of water in with it so it's not completely, a little bit diluted, and it helps the brush run a bit better when you're holding it. Now we're going to follow the brush strokes are going to be inward here, sideways on, kind of slightly diagonally in, following the kind of some lines of the sail. There's going to be some following it like they will be little small waves. Most of it is going to be like water pushing on this way. If you're worried about what type of brush marks to do after watching me, feel free to do them in this little section here where we'll be painting over, so somewhere around here. But I'm going to be doing something like this. You got to hold it, try and be quite delicate with it so your lines aren't very thick. You got to just kind of just touch the canvas lightly. You see, even I've got a lot of paint on, so I'm going to get some of that off. So I can make slightly smaller marks and then come in like this with it. Following the angle that the water is supposed to be coming in from. You will want the occasional one of these from where the foam at the end is kind of makes a weird little effect where there'll be the darker side to where the little foamy stuff is. Again, just touch the canvas fairly lightly. Try not to have too much paint on your brush, and you feel like your brush is sticking a bit, then feel free to add water to it, like dip it in water and mix it in slightly so it moves a bit smoother over the canvas. What we're doing here is we're creating the darker side of the water moving, because obviously the sun's going to be over here, then some parts of it, the waves are going to be facing this way, this way with the light on that side, so it's going to be darker on this side, which is why I'm painting these in, because there's going to be dark sides to all these waves from where water is as it moves in. Like I say, try and do these sort of little light brush marks. You're going to do a lot of these. You're going to touch the canvas a lot of times with this, doing this section. You feel you make a big one, you can just dab it like that with your finger. I get a lot of paint on my brush that time. There you go, we're starting to look a little bit like waves now, coming in. Again, I got a little bit too much on my brush, I need to mix it with some water and get some off there. I'm going to do this for all of this. Of all the little bits that we'll be doing on this artwork, this bit is probably the longest bit, getting these lines in, getting this kind of sense of texture to the ocean. You definitely don't want to be making the same mark each time, otherwise the waves won't look real. Good to make sure you have different brush strokes. Like some of mine are going in like a wave's end, some of them's a bit flat, and then some of them's a slight curve this way. Just to indicate there's different types of shadows and waves and things happening here. That's why also I'm holding it fairly loosely to help me give me those different types of marks on the canvas. This will take a while. Don't worry about that noise, that's just my dog coughing. Final one of these ones where there's a definitive wave is seen coming in. And then we're going to move on to kind of distant suggestions of the water moving. It's good to have the occasional line across, indicate small little indentations of waves there. I'm gonna, oops, it's a bigger mark than I anticipated. I think I had too much paint on my brush. So now we're gonna, the further out we go, the slightly flatter our marks are gonna be, because the water's gonna seem flatter the further away we are, because we're not really gonna see these contours of waves going up and down quite as much. So these marks are going to be a little flatter, not completely flat, every single one, but most of them flatter. Like I say, this will take a while, so have some patience. We're getting through it. It will look good. You see, this ocean does look quite realistic. I was quite happy with it when how this one came out. So if you follow me, we should be able to get something similar. I put my hands holding it a little bit tighter now because I want to keep these brush marks fairly small, not too big in the distance. So I'm not touching the canvas very thick way here. Pretty straight, the occasional one coming in this direction, which is where it's going to be. If your brush is having trouble going smoothly across the surface, then feel free, like I just did then, to mix it with a little bit of water again to help the brush go along the surface a little bit smoother. Need to create slightly random type shapes here. Some are lines, some like curve in a little bit to indicate some sort of water moving together. Little waves forming off in the distance. That are likely to come in and look a bit more like these. If you've noticed that this element is taking you a bit longer, don't worry, that's completely normal if you're new to this sort of brushwork. Obviously I'm more familiar with it perhaps, and therefore I'm a little bit easier at going a little bit faster, kind of securing what I'm doing. Everything takes time, so just go at your own pace with it. If you feel I'm getting ahead at all with anything, feel free to pause it and do as you need. And get some more of these marks out here. In a second, when we've kind of done this, but we'll add the occasional thicker one to indicate bigger waves forming out in the distance, ready to come in and look like these bigger ones. Here we go, doing these slightly thicker indentations to suggest waves out in the distance. Not very thick, just like that, just a little bit more sense of something happening off in the distance. There you go, I think we're getting close to getting this part done. I'm sure some of you are going, thank goodness, all these tiny little marks. How many 100 times have I touched the canvas here doing all this? A lot. There you go, if you stand back though, look at that. It's starting to look like waves coming in, I think. You may also notice something like, I notice that isn't thick there. I notice it looks like there could be something here needed. That feels like too big a gap for there being no sort of wave at all of note. So I've just done that. So yeah, you'll notice little things even when you step back. I feel like something, this one here could be indication something's coming in. There you go. Now another thing, I don't know if you've got your grey, or this grey that you've got is still wet, but if it is, get a tiny bit here, there, douse it in water here like this so it's really there, really dark, and then, you know, if we see that there, it's very watery. Wipe it off a bit so you've not got much on there, and then just touch it in here, add a few different tones of a different type of grey into the water. There, you see that? So then when we come to do the highlights of the white later on, we've got a few different types of grey in there. We've got these dark blacks, we've got these like slightly darker grey now, we've got the light grey that we started off with, and then we're going to have the white on top of that. So I have a few different colours to give a little more realism and definition and kind of texture to the ocean by all these different shades you can see in it. So you just touch, you see it's not, you know, it's quite easy to rub it off, there's not much to it, but it's just enough to kind of give it a little bit of an intriguing kind of extra bit of something. And you don't want to do it everywhere either. Just, and touch it quite lightly, not too thick on, but just, you see a little bit there. It's just added a little something in some to the water generally. There you go, and now you've got a few different colours in there. Now we're going to move on to adding some white into the sky. We're going to look to add some of this stuff here. So you want to get some pure white, get it on there, get back to this medium brush. We were just using a grey, so feel free to wipe it off, wash it, wipe it off, try and get rid of if there's any of that hint of grey on it off. So then we can concentrate on getting a nice thick amount and putting it here where it's likely to be, and kind of go side to side with this initial bit here, like it's the sun's breaking through certain sky seeing through clouds and across the sky there. Then as you get some paint off your brush, try to work it up a little bit so then there's little highlights but not quite as thick as here. You see, like that. So I'm going to go back and get more on my brush now. Do some more of this bit where it gets brighter over to this section and a little bit under it there. And now I've got some of that paint off my brush, I'm going to bring up some of these highlights that are going to be here again, so it's not too bright. Like I say, you can even dip it slightly in water as you do that, just so then you can spread it around a little bit smoother. See that I was starting to get a little bit more shades and a little bit more hint of something going on in the sky. Pick up some of the thicker paint again and go back in to try and thicken some of this up there. Bring it down as you're getting a little bit more off the brush here and across there again. Add some of this stuff here, it goes on towards the sky here, you can see. So now you've got some of it off the brush, move it over, so then you've got some of the lighter highlights in these clouds over here, what will be clouds anyway. Thicken it up again into these bits where the light is supposed to be really bright. And now the paint's off the brush a bit again. Even like you say for this bit, get a little bit of white and a little bit of water, just so then it isn't quite as thick and strong a white as this. It's diluted slightly with the water, and we can move it around some of these bits. You want to, again, we're going side to side here, you see, in where some of these clouds in the distance, some of these white bits there. We don't want to do too much because, like I say, this is going to be the light side, that's the darker side, so we don't want to go too crazy. That's why we're only doing this with the diluted water there, but it's going to go up as well, so we need some of these up here. I'm kind of adding them as kind of an angle, different thing. You can also smudge it in with your finger if you want, or if you don't feel like it's running, like if it's moving off across the canvas, then you can do this by adding a bit of water again. Not too much, like I say, just a dab, just to try and make it run a bit smoother off the brush. Starting to get a sense that light's coming through these darker bits here. Trying to find its way out. You don't want to get it too bright in some of these bits, so feel free to use your finger like I'm doing to rub some of it out. Look at that sky now, it looks like it's got a bunch of different shades of grey in it there. We're not referring to the book, not happening on this art class. There, the little light stuff around there. Back to this slightly diluted stuff, add a little bit up in this section. Not too much. And we don't want it to be a complete, like a line up there. I want it to be a little bit random to indicate there's different clouds around. There you go. Mix in a little bit more. This bit, because it's quite here, this bit should be a little bit lighter there. This doesn't have to be too precise a brush mark making. Just kind of because we're kind of suggesting different tones in the sky. We're not doing it really detailed because obviously this is way off in the distance. The palm trees and things like that, they're close stuff that we need to worry about. So you may want to get some thick stuff and just like get it onto the really bright sections here, just to make sure it's on fairly thick in here. Slightly, just a little bit of it now, got not so much on the brush, just there where it's going to like punch through some of these clouds quite brightly, but not too crazy. There you go. I think that's roughly, maybe add a little bit on this section there. It's kind of mostly done for this sky now, I think. Got a bunch of different tones in there. You can see that light is breaking through. It's going to match the lightness of the ocean when we add some white highlights to it shortly. There you go. I feel like this bit is the only bit that needs a little bit more. It's a little bit uneven how darker this bit is. There you go. I think that's... You will see it from yourself, like bits like that doesn't look too realistic. That looks a bit too crazy there. I think it's kind of a fairly decent transition in these bits. I feel like that bit there could be slightly better. The sun bursting through. When there's not much paint on my brush, just a little bit to add to this, because often in the horizon is the lightest part, but we're going to have dark clouds on the horizon there, so it needs to be some lightness, but then the sense of the clouds after in a minute when we paint them in. Just going to add a little bit more there, not too bright. I'm going to smudge that with my hand. There we go. Right, I'm fairly happy with that. We're going to move on to a different part of the canvas now that we leave that to dry a little bit. We're going to get the white, put some like off here like this, mix just a little dash, just a dash of water in there, put it on. And we're going to do the similar mark making that we did here. Not as many of the darks. No, there's more darks than there are lights, because obviously we're on this side and the light is that side. So we're not going to be able to see those lights quite as much as we're able to see these darks because of where we're situated. The light is coming this way, we're looking at all these divots from this side. So we're likely to see more shadows than we are highlights. So this is why there's going to be less of the white highlights here indicating light and more of the shadows of the dark. So maybe roughly about half. So like all these marks you see here, we're looking for about half. And again, you want to hold it fairly loose, and you've got to do like strange S's and little marks. I think that's a little bit too thick, my paint there. I want to make it a little bit loose. But like, look to do it on, if you see here, on the other side of like little marks like that. So it indicates that it's the light side that way of the shadow. So it's like that. Well, it doesn't have to be too precise. In fact, actually, based on the way those marks came out. I think it might be better if we use this, seeing as we don't want to make too big a mark. Use this, the long and thin one, and then hold it loosely and be able to, yeah, there you go, it's able to get a slightly thinner mark. You need to be a bit random and sporadic, because obviously all the marks in the sand will be a bit sporadic too. So you apologies for the jump cut there. I had just had to change battery. We are using this, getting the highlights to all these marks in the sand. Again, we're holding it fairly loosely, not too, we're not really grabbing on, we're holding it fairly loosely to try and give us a variety of different marks, and to do it fairly easily and fairly fast. You see this there, if you step back, it's starting to look like a textured surface now. You can also see where the dilution makes it not so light, not really a really bright white, just an indication of something lighter. So you see we're just moving this, get into this. It's not going to take anywhere near as long as this did. Like I say, we're not doing quite as many, much mark on the canvas. And they do have to kind of overlap a little bit here and there, because obviously little marks in the sand where the divots are do have a high point, where right on the edge of where it dips in from a foot mark. Just getting on with this. It's going to be slightly lighter on this side, like you say, because that's where the light is. So, and we're going to have this palm tree is going to make most of this be in the shadows. So feel like you've done anything a little bit bright, you can smudge it with your finger like I just did then. Oops, you see that's a bit bright there, a bit too much paint on. most of that done there. Okay, we're getting close to having done this section now, which is nice. Definitely step back, it does look like it's got some texture here, which is good. Do feel like I'd need a few brighter moments just near here where the light's supposed to be its brightest on this side of the canvas. You will notice things like that if you step back, as it were, like this, have a look. Helps for me, I've got a reference photo here, reference painting here, but you should be able to notice yourself by looking at the sand and looking what you're expecting here, like, oh right, this is going to be brighter and yet this side looks brighter, so I need to add more here. Little things like that you'll notice if you occasional step back to have a look at your painting, which means feel free to pause me at any moment to do that if you want. Okay, we'll move back over this side now with this stuff. Just add a little bit here. There's going to be some, even if it's on the shadowy side, there's going to be the occasional bit where you want to indicate that there's still different texture in the sand. Now, having done this stuff pretty much now, I'm gonna call it a day on that now. Now we're going to add the same sort of thing, but for the little marks here. You see on these here where the little shells and things coming up the beach in this bit would make. So we're just going to do, you see on this side of it, so this the light where sunlight's more likely to hit it, just on that side add a random, the occasional random one too. See, just holding it fairly close right here, just to get a small line. So it doesn't need to be anything too thick, too detailed, just kind of a little line along that side of these black lines. It doesn't even need to be exactly next to it, in me. And the occasional one of its own, like there. Oops, that was a bright one. little bit of water again to mix with this paint. There we go. So there's that, pretty much done. Let's have a look. That looks like a bright one there. Whoops. Now we're going to move on to doing the lighter stuff in the... what will we do actually? Oh no, we'll do the slightly darker bits in the clouds and this, and then when we do the white here, if we do anything too dark, we can always lighten it up with some of this. So we'll move on to the dark bits in the clouds. We're going to mix a dark grey for these oncoming clouds here, and then the occasional spot we're going to add a little bit of dark grey too. So if you've got any black left over like I have here that you haven't used, use that. If not, then get yourself some more out here. Not too much, just a little bit. You see, like that. Get yourself some of the white. If you've got some like this, like I have loose on your palette already, use a little bit of that. If you haven't, then pour yourself a little bit. I'm going to mix a little bit of water in there just so it goes on the canvas nicely. And I think I need a dab more black. Because we are going to add a little bit of light white over the top of it for the lighter sides, even of these clouds. So now I've mixed that. It's up to you if you want to use this medium brush like I am, or if you want to use a thin brush here, because we're going to do along this horizon line here. So you have the option, you can either use a thinner one, which may help you do that, like not go in as far. You can use this one if you're fairly confident in your brush mark making, that you can keep it fairly flat there. You've also got the option, if you want to, of masking tape this across here, so then you can paint it and not have to worry, and then once you're done, remove the masking tape, and then you've got a line not to worry about. So that's your three options. I'm going to go with this. And also another thing, when you're using some of these things and you want to get a good line, depending on how you are, you can turn it on its side if it's easier. Like for me, because I'm right-handed, this will be easier doing this. Like that all the way down. If you're using the smaller brush, it would be the exact same thing as this, only obviously it may take you a little bit longer because you're using a smaller brush. I'm just getting this bit down. Now that's done. Now we can thicken this line slightly. I feel like it needs a little bit on more there. So, like, if you need to thicken it up once you've got your horizon line in. Only a little bit, because we're going to add these little bumps in with the smaller brush in a second. I feel like that needs to be a little bit tighter there. You may notice this yourself. Little bits that you maybe didn't do quite as well. Like I didn't just then. Right, so just getting that sort of amount down, you see there, maybe half an inch, maybe a little bit more, just there. See, this is an example of what I was mentioning there. You can see this bit here looks thinner, so it needs thickening out there. I'm going to do this with a little bit of white in a second anyway, so if it's not perfect it's okay, you can kind of adjust it with the white. But let's move on. I'm going to move over to this very thin, smaller brush now. This one you see there, not the really long and thin one, this, the shorter and thin one. And we're just going to add little peaks and valleys and odd little shapes to these clouds. You see, like this, to indicate clouds that are to-ing and fro-ing a bit and coming in. They're right in the distance but on their way, so they don't need to be too precise. You don't make them too big either. These don't really look too much like clouds so far. You're almost rising up a bit, like how sometimes dark clouds do look like they're rising up out of nowhere. So there's those clouds in the distance there. I'm going to switch to the medium brush here. You see this paint we've got here, I want to make it a little bit more watery so it's not quite as on as it is here, and we're just going to add a little bit like here to the corner. Feel free to smudge it in a little bit like I'm doing there. You don't want it too thick. I do want to indicate a darker tone than that's already there in a few spots, because these do look like dark clouds approaching. That may be a bit too much there. It's a good thing if it's watery, you can kind of wipe some of the pigment off. And I'm going to go over that anyway with these palm trees to some extent. I just want to add a few different shades in there. See, this is quite a nice strong bit of grey you see coming down the centre. Then this side does have a few darker bits too. So I'm going to do the side option here because these are really out in the distance, so they're looking almost very side on like this. And the occasional dash here and there. You can't go crazy with this stuff, otherwise you may need to go over it again with the lighter stuff. If you do too much, you're just trying to indicate some different tones of grey in the sky. Try and give it a bit more atmosphere to it. There you go, I think that's kind of nice how it's added a little bit more to the sky, not too much at least. Don't want to do too much. So I'm going to leave that at that. I would go over that with a bit of a lighter colour because it is a bit much, but as you can see here, we're going to be going over this bit with the palm trees. So I'm not so worried about that because we're going over it with these anyway. But now I'm going to go back to the small thin brush, and you see these bits here where there's like the lighter sides of these clouds where the light's hitting it. I'm going to go on and do these. So if you got white like this already out, use that. If not, then get a little bit of white that's just pure white, and this may not have completely dried yet, if so that's fine. And just do the kind of side nearest to whereabouts the sunlight is, not more the top area here, and a little bit maybe along, just enough to indicate that there's some light hitting these clouds. And if you feel like you're getting a bit much on, feel free to smudge it like I'm doing there. I think it does help that not look too much. Just add these bits in here then, like we're doing. Shouldn't take too long. I'm holding it fairly close though to get nice little marks where I want them. It should really be on this side now, with the clouds being facing towards the lighter bits towards where the sun's coming from, so on these sides. Adding some lighter bits to the bit where the actual sun's going to be hitting it there. It will be lighter, and you don't have to add quite as much on this side because it's going to be further away from where the sunlight is. Still keeping it rough, preferably on this side closest to where the sun is coming from. Smudging that a bit, that's a bit much. And a little bit of lightness towards the bottom. Oops, it's a bit too... distant dark clouds moving in, although they could be mountains. I know they do look a bit like mountains, but clouds do sometimes look like fluffy mountains. So right, we're going to move on to using our thin long brush here, getting the white, probably watering it down a little bit so it runs smoothly, because it's not going to run too smooth with this. And then go doing a white line along here is what we're going to do. So like I say, if you prefer to use the masking tape and then do it, that's so perfectly good. I'm going to do it here, and I think I'm going to... do I want to do it sideways on again? No, I'm not sure. No, I think I'm going to do it as it is. Just, I'm going to hold it all the way down there so I'm quite controlled. When you sense it coming off the brush a bit, add more. And if you feel like you've gone away from the concept of a line, feel free to do a little rub out thing like I did then. I feel like I made it slightly thicker than I wanted. There you go. So sort of thinness we're looking for, just to indicate that line there is white, the horizon. Now we're going to keep this brush out. I'm going to use try and keep it fairly thick here, and we're going to go over the waves here. I'm going to do the top of them, and we're going to almost dot it, like we're going to kind of go along it but dot it kind of, because we want to indicate that there's a slight hint of splash coming over as these waves are curling in on themselves, with the top part being white. Like look, you can see me, I'm going to do this and then do the occasional bit where I break that black line to indicate that these waves are going to be crashing in on down into that. So you see there, I'm going to do that for all of them. And we're using the thicker white here because we want these to like pop, the dark to light contrast on the waves, because these shadows are really going to be where the water's curving over, and we can't really see inside where the water's curving over because it's that sort of shape. So the dark bits are going to be in there, which is like this is. So we want to indicate that dark to light contrast there to indicate that's the sort of shape of these waves. So I'm going to keep going doing this on all of them, like I say. And it's perfectly preferred actually that if it's not, you don't make the same sort of marks. It's good to make all sorts of different ones to indicate these waves curving over in different ways, falling in on themselves in different ways, different kind of splashes and amount of water falling and all that sort of stuff. See these occasional little dabs there indicate some water's falling in over. Not much, you don't want to take away from the dark colours there, just enough to indicate some splash and water's dripping over as it falls. These waves collapse in there. There you go, they're starting to look a bit like waves. When we add the under bit here, it'll look even more like it, these other white bits. These little marks get thinner the further back we go because of obviously these waves are further away, so we're not going to be able to see as much of this white, and it's not going to be as apparent to us the further back it is. So now we're just dabbing around the edge there. Just keeping on with these smaller marks, like I say, the further back we go, more delicate. That's why I'm holding it right at the end, and I'm being a little bit more tentative in how I'm putting paint on the canvas. I don't want to put too much on there, just little indications there of that. Now we're going to move on to making these sort of marks that we were making earlier with the black, only we're going to do the white now, and we're again not going to do quite as many as the same here, just enough to indicate different lighter parts of it. We're going to start off with the lightest bit. What we're going to do is here where the sun is going to be hitting this water, so we're going to do a nice amount there, you see. Picking up this white again, and we're just going to follow these waves in. The occasional white there to indicate where the sun's finally hitting it from coming out of those shadows. A little like curve shape to them. I think I need a little bit of water to these. The same slight hint of curves coming in on here, not too much. And little lines again coming in here. And in this bit right here, we're going to do kind of a dotted white again here, because this is where there'll be like the foam right at the edge, which will be like a miscellaneous, mostly white, but obviously not completely white because it's foam. So we're going to do a kind of dotted effect with this here to do mostly white around the edge, but not completely. There you go. We're again not wanting to make this line even, because these waves won't be even and symmetrical and a straight line. So I think we're about done with this kind of layer of foam. We're going to go back to doing these kind of brush marks we were mentioning here. I'm going to get a little bit of water with this stuff here, just a little bit, so then it runs a bit smoother for doing these marks. Again, a little bit of water. The same sort of sense of direction as it coming in. So Keep these white lines coming right now. It does take a while, but we'll get there. It does seem to pay off adding these highlights to the ocean. It does make it look more realistic. Again, holding it quite closely, just trying to be delicate with this bit. Again, nice and light brush marks here, just trying to get it, don't want to get it too watery, otherwise we won't get any real white effect on it. Need to get a nice bit there. These nice thin marks again. Keep coming back to this. It's a lot of paint on my brush there. Don't want to get all that on the right, particularly right at the back. Nearly there, just some more thin lines indicating where sunlight's hitting the ocean. How's that starting to look? I think it's starting to look pretty good there. Just gonna still need these hints of white on this side and mainly up here. Just little bits. few more for me here. There, and now just want to make sure I make it look a bit brighter where the sun is, by adding a few more on this side. And whilst it's got this white, it'd be nice to just add a little bit of pure white into some of these areas where you want it to be pure white. Right, there we go, and I think that's pretty much done with that for now. Now we're going to, in fact, the first little final job we'll do actually related to some of this stuff before we move on to the coconut, the palm trees and the little coconuts and all that, is we're going to do this black. If you've got any black left over, I have got a little. I'm going to mix it in with a hint, just a tiny dab of water so it runs smoother, and just do this bit here around there like that, just to define the edge of the ocean. It doesn't have to be too smooth, you can do it, like I say, you can do it close to it, and you don't want it to be an even line, just there around the white. It'll help it pop a bit, and there is kind of a shadow to the foam because it has a bit of depth to it. You would notice this. Keep going back to it like I am. There. Mine wasn't running smoothly over this stuff, so I'll just redo there. So you see that there's the ocean pretty much done there. We're going to move on to doing the palm tree now. So I'm going to get my vine charcoal. If you've got this, get it out. If you've got the pencil instead, use that. If you want, you could even use a piece of chalk if you want, similar to that. If you've got one. But yeah, I'm going to be using this. And if you see my reference painting, if I move it more alongside now, is this. It's here, so and it goes up. What we're going to do is going to draw this bit and this bit, and then I'm going to join it up to where these marks, where roughly the base ends and the trunk starts beginning here, and I'm going to draw a line up the middle is what I'm going to do here. And then we're going to draw corresponding ones to the side. And you see these palm trees, most don't. They're not completely straight, so we won't want a completely straight line. So if you see, we're about 1.5 inches or so in here, and just around this sort of place. So I'm going to draw mine there for where that base is going to be. It's a little bit further up because of the way the beach is over here. And if you look how far in we are, just over 1/3, so I'd say somewhere around here. So this is roughly where the other part of the palm tree is going to be, and this is more of comes up to inwards towards the ocean bit there. So I'm going to draw that in, And then this one's slightly steeper, so it kind of goes in at an angle, and then a little divot in there. See, this needs to be a bit wider there actually in comparison. So say we've got right that there, that'll be my base of my palm tree now, and now I'm going to go whereabouts I want the palm tree to finish, which is, it is about 2/3 up where this bit is. As you see there, that's about 1/3, 1/3, about 1/3 again, so it's about 2/3 up the canvas we're looking here for this. So I'm going to pop in whereabouts I want it, which is going to be around there. And now I'm going to make my way from here in a line that isn't completely straight. I'm going to go this way, slight bend there, inward a bit, slight bend again, and then straighten up as it heads in. So it's going to look like that. I'm going to do the same again pretty much this side. Into the line there, and then same, you see here though it curves in a bit, so it's going to go in a bit this way, then straighten up, and then follow that little outy bit there all the way up back into there. So we've got a kind of interesting shape for the palm tree, as you can see there, for the body of it. So now what we're going to do is we can draw these ones into with your fingers. You've got it out. I've got there. This one's coming down from there to about there. And this one's a little bit further out than this one, so it's starting just to here, so there, that's roughly it. I want this one, you can draw these in too. Gonna go all the way out to, it's gonna be in this side of it, then one straight up. Literally with a slight curve there, and then this one's going to curve out there. So that's roughly where my palm trees are going to go, and palm leaves and all that. I'm going to get some pure black now. Get it on, use this medium brush I'm using, and go right down the centre there of where your palm tree is going to be. Paint all the way up on this side black, because this is where the shadow is going to be, so it's fine to go black all this side. And you'll maybe want to go to about here on here, this side, not too much low, because this will have a bit of lightness, and we're going to add some sort of highlights here, so it doesn't look too bad. Just a little bit shadow there, a little bit of the darkness there, but not too much. I'm going to go back with this black, and we're going to really get it all, this trunk and whatnot, painted in. If you're worried about if you've done this, I'm going to go get rid of some of that excess charcoal that's there. And then if you're worried about this bit, you can switch to this smaller brush if you prefer. I'm happy using this, but if you're not, then feel free to switch to the smaller brush to get along these sides a little bit cleaner. Because of how being right-handed, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm going to switch this around so I can get this edge nicely. There we go, just finishing this off. I think maybe this bit needs a little bit there so it doesn't look too thin there. Maybe it's best just to tip it again just to get it right. There you go, it's not completely straight, it looks pretty good if you ask me. I'm going to quickly just do this line. With this. And the final one, these ones. Right, now I'm going to switch to this smaller brush now and get some of this black. And you see where these like coconuts are? I'm going to just add these in like little circular balls around here. These are optional, feel free not to do them if you prefer not to, if it feels like something unnecessary. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to add a little bit of textured stuff here from where palm trees, the previous palm leaves have kind of fallen away and left a little bit of something sticking out from where they fell from. There you go, indicates a few of those in there. Now we're going to use this again, add a little bit of water so it runs a bit smoothly, and we're going to add, like, you see here, we're just going to add little sections coming off like this. We want there to be a little bit of a gap between them all. again on these. Keep doing this on these. And stop just short there. You do want there to be a little bit of a gap there to indicate where the leaves start. Just a hint on the other side. Right, we're going to do the same on these. Don't want it to be too defined there, and the same on this. Got this final one of these to do now in this style. Then we can move on to making it properly pop as a palm leaf. Right, there's that, and now we're going to switch over to our fan brush. Or like I say, if you... So as I was saying, until the low battery thing just rudely interrupted me and I had to swap, we're going to move on to the fan brush. Or like I say, if you wanted to, if you had one of these instead, you could use that, but I think the fan brush is better, so if you've got one, use one. We're going to add a little bit of water to this, black to make this. There you go. And what we're going to do, we're going to have it on its side, because you see that shape there? It kind of curves. It makes a very good thing for doing these. Watch. So you see there, we're able to get these nice palm leaf effects here just by doing this and curving it slightly inward as you do it. Yeah, and we're going to do all of these like this. All make sure they follow the same direction. There we go. Hope yours is coming along well. Hope you're starting to get excited seeing this effect and go, wow, they're looking good. They're starting to look like proper palm leaves. Just skim it. You don't want to touch it too thick. There you go, there's those palm leaves on that side. We're now going to move over to this, and you have to turn it over. You have to scoop it round this way this time. So I'm going to turn it around this way like this. So like you see, it's got a slight curve to it, so the curve goes around this way like that. I'm going to start at the top where it'll be easier. See that? You just kind of twist it round. If you do a bit too much like I did there, you just then switch to the sideways on and even it out. Like that. And you may need to add a little bit of hint of thicker stuff right here to even out there. Look at that, it's starting to properly hang. Look nice and feathery almost at the end. I'm going to do the same again here. So now on to these ones. The reason I didn't do that one too thick because these are going to overlap and I don't want it to be like just pure black over here. Oh, it's starting to look that way, isn't it? Doesn't matter, when we add the lighter highlights in, it will start to look a bit better then regarding that. I didn't add these on this side, and let me just... get some paint off my brush. You can't do some of these feathery effects if you have too much paint on. There you go. And this one's mostly hanging down, so it's going to curve inwards like this. A slight hint of something there. Okay, so we've kind of done that bit, although I feel like personally, I don't know about how yours looks, I want to just add a few more wispy ones there, like that. There you go, that looks a little bit better. There's that. But now it's time to move on to some white highlights, I think. If you're still got some nice white left, like I have some nice white left here, it's not dry yet, I'm going to wipe it off, then use that. If not, then get some fresh little white pile here and start doing your thing with it. For this, get it ready and use that. We're just going to do the same as we've just been doing, only lighter and not as often, because obviously these are just highlights to where light is hitting these leaves. We don't want to do too much. See, and it's mainly just the ends as well. Kind of best to miss this bit out because these ones are going to get in the way. Sideways on. Right, and then there's that. And now this one. There you go, there's that. If you do get a little bit of white on this, then you can just curve around and get probably this brush and go around this with a bit of black, which I might do just there where I've gone over it a little bit. Just there like that. Just to redefine that line again and there. Because this one is supposed to be in front. So there you go. Now back to this on there. I think I need a bit more white. This is a bit dry, it's not coming out as well. There you go. Don't want to get too much paint on your brush either for this. Just the occasional one. Then again, there's a little bit of the mismatching over each other there, but if you're doing too crazy, then you can always go over it again in the black and do the same effect if you feel like it's not quite right. But that's okay in my eyes. Some of them are going to be interlapped, as this one's on this slightly this way and that one's a bit further back. It's possible on this side where they do kind of slightly intersect. There you go, nice bit of white there. Didn't want to have it overpowering, that's why I smudged it slightly. And then the final ones on the base here are this bottom palm leaf. It's a bit thick for my liking. I may have to smudge this one again. May even go over that bit a little bit in black. It's a bit much. So get some black on there and just done. And then just still see the occasional bit of white there. There you go, that's that. And then we're going to move on to using some of our white with this smaller brush here, you see. Because the sun's coming this side, we're going to add a little bit of light sort of stuff to these coconuts on this side. Imagine there's a few here. Not too bright there because of the stuff, just a little bit on these just to indicate they're there. You can always do like this where you just don't go too crazy with how bright they are. There you go, that looks kind of nice if you ask me. A little bit there on where these highlights are, and then we're going to see this ground here. We're going to make it a little bit brighter because this is where the sun will be hitting on this bit here. So there. I'm going to add a little bit of white there. Just to brighten that bit there. Then we're going to add, not too much, just a little bit here, just to brighten this bit up. Obviously not going all the way to here unless you've got a little bit off your brush like that, like I have, and just smudging it down a bit, just to indicate this is still sand. This is still sand that we're dealing with here. And then we're going to get this, water it down slightly, and then we're going to do little rings around this side, trying to make it nice and thick on this side. Don't want to really do a thick, an actual proper full line down there, but just a kind of more of an indication, because there needs to be highlights on this side where there's going to be lighter, the light's going to hit it from. Maybe it is best just to do a little bit of a line there. Not too much of one, just that. And then using this to do these lines. I'm holding it medium, not fairly close, but not too close. I still want to get these fairly loose. And it doesn't matter if you feel like you're making it too light here, because we can make it darker with a bit of black. But I feel like that's nice right on that edge, get it nice and bright. Just there to indicate where the shadow kind of ends there, because you don't want it to be complete shadow for this when it's going to be there. And that just light highlight there. This is where the sun's probably going to hit it the most, because that's sticking out from this palm tree there. So this is going to have a nice little bright spot just there. And then you can feel free to just gonna like slightly do this whilst I've got a little bit on, just like they call this dry blending, I believe, when you kind of got a hint on your brush and you kind of scrub it in slightly. So that looks pretty good, but I do think we need a little bit on the opposite side. So I'm gonna add a bit of black, get a little bit of this white, mix it together, a little bit of that, and then come back in just to deal with some of these bits that look a bit too bright for my liking. I feel like it needs a little bit darker there. Just a little bit more, I think. Just there. I don't know, I think we're virtually done there. I think it may need a little dark spot on this coconut bit here. A bit too much white there. So that, a little bit of the pure black here, just little highlight lines there. A little bit there. Maybe not so bright, so like that. I think we're basically done here. There you go. I think we're basically done. So if you see that, that is how it looks finished. That's how it compares. Previously done one. Looks pretty good if you ask me. I would like to hear how yours turned out, so feel free to contact me on social media. My handle thing is at Robbie Potter Art on pretty much all the social media platforms. You can also check out my other art on robbiepotterart.com, where, you know, there's artworks for sale. You can see the variety that I do. You can, you know, contact me for a commission if you'd like. It's up to you. Have a look, see what you reckon, and, you know, and let me know, like I say, how yours artworks turns out. I'd be happy to hear about it. Till then, there's more painting videos if you're interested in moving on to another one, and hope you have a good day. Oh, look at this, it looks like it overlaps. that looks pretty cool, or almost seamless. I didn't intend for it to look like that, but it worked out pretty good, didn't it? Yeah. Have a nice day, and I hope your painting went well, and yeah, let me know how yours turned out. See you next time. Goodbye.